Well, Notre Dame is back under the national spotlight, and Saturday night versus Navy is the perfect chance to prove they're not just a playoff contender because of their ranking, but because of their performance on the field week in and week out. We've got your full preview plus predictions coming right up.
You are Locked On Irish, your daily podcast on the Notre Dame Fighting Irish. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Hello and welcome into Locked On Irish, your daily home for Notre Dame football. I'm your host, Tyler Wojciak. I'm a Notre Dame alum, a producer at Fox Sports, and I've been covering the Irish since 2020. I am thrilled to have you here with me on Thursday, November 6th, and thanks for making this your first watch or listen of the day. Today's episode is brought to you by FanDuel. Right now, new customers can bet just $5, and if your bet wins, you'll get $300 in bonus bets to use across the app. Download the app today. And before we dive in, I'd love it if you took a second to subscribe to the YouTube channel or follow on your preferred podcast platform. And by the way, this is your last chance to submit questions for the Friday mailbag. So if you want to be featured on the show, submit your questions in the YouTube comments below, or you can send them on X at Locked On Irish or on Instagram at Locked On Irish Pod. All right, Notre Dame is gearing up for their third straight rivalry matchup, and this Saturday they'll take on the Navy Midshipmen at home under the lights. This game is bigger than people think. We're going to start by breaking down what's at stake for Notre Dame now that they're back in the national conversation after the first CFP rankings came out on Tuesday night, and they were ranked 10th. Then I'm going to dive into Navy's explosive offense and the keys for the Irish defense to try and contain it before flipping to Navy's struggling defense and what Notre Dame needs to do offensively to take full control of this game. We'll close it out with a look at special teams, final score predictions, and why this weekend is the perfect opportunity for Notre Dame to prove to themselves that they're a complete football team. The rivalry game will kick off in prime time, 7:30 p.m. Eastern, inside Notre Dame Stadium this Saturday, November 8th. It is the third night game the Irish have played at home this year, and I don't have the stats to look it up, but I would bet that this is the first time the Irish have ever played Navy under the lights in Notre Dame Stadium. Good news for those of you who still have YouTube TV. This game is going to air on NBC, plus you can stream it on Peacock. So everyone should be able to watch this game. And Noah Eagle and Todd Blackledge will be on the call. And tell me if you've heard this before. The weather ain't looking great for this one, which has kind of been a theme of the season so far. They have already had one game delayed due to rain. That was against Purdue at home earlier in the year. They played in pretty rough conditions on the road against Miami and at home against USC. It looks like it's going to be a wet, gloomy day in South Bend on Saturday. High of 51 degrees with 15-mile-an-hour wind gusts and a 60% chance of rain during the day. And then the temps could drop into the low 40s at night. I don't think the rain is going to be nearly as much of a factor as it was in the USC game, but the conditions could play a factor as a whole. And Saturday is going to mark the 98th meeting between the two programs all time, and this rivalry has been back and forth from the beginning. Notre Dame holds a slim lead in the all-time series, 83-13-1. The Irish have a 7-game winning streak going right now against the Mids dating back to 2016. At one point, the Irish had won 43 straight over their annual opponent that started in 1964, but it was snapped in 2007. Then Navy rattled off 3 wins in 4 years, but water found its level, and Notre Dame has won at 12 out of the last 13 matchups by an average of 23 points per game. Last year, Navy was actually ranked going into the Notre Dame game. The Irish were 12th, and it was one of the few times in recent history when they were both ranked going into the time of the game, and Notre Dame proceeded to run them off the field, 51-14, in a game where Navy had 6 total turnovers. Brian Newberry is in his third season as the head coach of the Midshipmen, and he's done a really good job since he took over. He has a 22-11 career record, and they have improved each season with him at the helm. They finished 5-7 in his first season as a head coach, and Notre Dame just stomped them in Dublin in Newberry's first career game as a head coach. But then in 2024, his second year, Navy finished 9-3 in the regular season, and they capped it off with a win over Oklahoma in the bowl game. And I understand that Oklahoma was down last year, but that's still a big-time brand, a big-time program. Navy won that game for their 10th win on the year. And this season, they started off 7-0, and it looked like they might be ranked in the top 25 for the second year in a row when they faced off against the Irish, but they lost on the road to North Texas last week, 31-7. The Irish are heavy favorites going into Saturday. They are currently favored by 26.5 points on FanDuel, and the over-under is right at 55.5, so Vegas is projecting something close to a 41-14 win for Notre Dame. All right, so let's talk about the stakes in this matchup. It's the Navy game, right? So there's normally not a ton at stake. And the series has actually become one of the more divisive topics, I would say, among the Notre Dame fan base. Some fans love the rivalry. They want it to continue forever. And then there are others like myself who are ready to move on. And that's fine. Everyone is entitled to their own opinion. And before you spam the comments and tell me to learn about the history, just take a deep breath and relax, because I promise you, I know the history behind this game. It's kind of like the Jordan versus LeBron debate. No one is ever going to change their mind, and there is nothing that you can say that is going to move anybody off their position. So I'm not really interested in discussing the future of the rivalry today because, frankly, it doesn't matter. The only thing that matters on Saturday is that Notre Dame has 4 more guaranteed opportunities. Wow, I actually am starting to sound like Coach Freeman saying guaranteed opportunities. But anyway, Notre Dame has 4 more guaranteed opportunities to prove that they belong in the college football playoff. Obviously, they have to win out to get in, but the Navy game comes at a fascinating time because the initial college football playoff rankings dropped on Tuesday, and for once, the general populace didn't have a meltdown about the committee's top 25. I said on the show yesterday, I thought they got it right. Most analysts seem to agree. However, agreeing with the committee is not good for business, especially if you're in the content game. And a lot of people in the college football media were gearing up all day Tuesday to torch the committee. Once the rankings were released, we see it every single year. But as I've said many times before, it's going to work itself out. Most of the stuff we argue about in early November doesn't end up mattering, but that doesn't drive clicks. So when people realized they actually agree with the top 25 for the most part, they had to find something to be mad about, right? And that something became Notre Dame being ranked top 10, number 10 to be exact, for a lot of people. Ari Wasserman from On3 was real fired up about it. Pat Forty wrote a column for Sports Illustrated saying that Notre Dame was grossly misranked, which is funny because Forty's probably going to appear in the Here Come the Irish documentary at the end of the season as if he's some authority on Notre Dame football, but I digress. Really, it comes down to the fact that people were upset that Notre Dame was the highest ranked 2-loss team. And look, I can understand some arguments for Texas and I can understand some arguments for Oklahoma to be ranked higher than Notre Dame because they each have better individual wins than the Irish. But the metrics the committee uses support Notre Dame being ahead of those teams, which contradicts the idea that this ranking was based on vibes, like Ari suggested. And here's where Navy comes into play, because Notre Dame is now back under the national microscope. After they started out 0-2, they basically lived in anonymity while beating Purdue, Arkansas, Boise State, and NC State. And people watched the Irish knock off the Trojans back in mid-October, and they realized, yeah, the Irish are probably legit, but the top 10 ranking put them fully back in the national consciousness. Now, everyone is watching again, and not all of it is positive. They have to be watching because they can't watch anything on ESPN because the YouTube TV debacle, but this game is going to be on NBC. Everyone is going to be able to watch. And a lot of people are waiting, maybe even hoping for Notre Dame to slip up against Navy or Pitt over the next couple weeks. And even if Notre Dame wins, a lot of people would still like to see Notre Dame struggle a little bit to help validate their argument. Now, does that really matter for the playoff path? Maybe not, because if Notre Dame wins out, they're probably in the playoff regardless. But performance absolutely matters now, not just margin. They have to play like a playoff caliber team. They certainly didn't play like that last week against Boston College. One clunker is forgivable. Multiple in November begins to define you. They have not played a complete, clean game in all 3 phases since NC State. And even then, they left points on the field. Like, I didn't walk away from that game feeling overjoyed about Notre Dame's performance against the Wolfpack. I feel better about that game now because of what NC State did to Georgia Tech last week, but still, I think they left a lot to be desired in that 36-7 win. Now, at this point in the season, Notre Dame shouldn't be chasing style points to make people in the media or the committee feel differently about them. They need to do it for themselves, because championship teams don't need external validation to tell them who they are. They prove it through consistent, complete performances, and they stack those up when the pressure ramps up in November. And Saturday is a perfect chance to show themselves that they can play a complete, dominant game in all 3 phases again. And if they do that, even the people waiting for them to stumble won't be able to ignore it. A win over Navy won't change national perception. It never does. But it can reestablish who Notre Dame is supposed to be, a team built on the lines of scrimmage that overwhelms opponents with physicality and speed, and they play clean in the 3rd phase of the game. Championship teams separate in November. They don't play with their food. And Saturday is another test of whether Notre Dame is ready to separate, reminding themselves who they are and proving it for 4 straight quarters. All right, that's what's on the line. Now let's talk some ball. Navy's offense is unlike anything Notre Dame faces all year, and this version is even more dangerous than last season. So how is the Irish defense going to be able to stop them? Find out right after this. Today's episode is brought to you by Supply House. When the opening whistle blows on a new repair, get your crew moving forward with Supply House. Order today and see parts on your doorstep tomorrow. Over 280,000 plumbing, HVAC, and electrical items from the most trusted brands in the business. Their real-time inventory and honest lead times keep you from punting projects, while their industry-leading customer service always has your blind side covered. Need parts fast for a project? Supply House has next-day delivery. Talk about a game changer. The part finder tools and 3D schematics can save you hours on jobs where every detail matters. Their TradeMaster perks like priority shipping and dedicated support make the whole process smoother. Join the free TradeMaster program today and score serious perks like priority shipping, lower prices, and a dedicated support line. Visit supplyhouse.com to sign up for free and use promo code SHCollege5 for 5% off your first order. That's supplyhouse.com. Real people, real service. Whenever you talk about the Navy game, you got to start with the triple option offense. So that is where we will begin with the scouting report. Navy is in year 2 under Drew Cronick as the offensive coordinator, and his offense is way more of a modern option/spread hybrid than the old flex bone that we've been used to seeing our entire lives. They run a lot more plays out of the shotgun with some spread concepts mixed in, but they also have their triple option principles baked in as well, and they have been extremely efficient all season long, as they normally are. They are 3rd in the country in yards per play. They are 6th in points per drive, and they are tied for 27th in scoring offense. However, they have produced at a really high level against some terrible defenses. Notre Dame is going to be the first Power 4 team that they play all season long. And honestly, the best defense that they have faced this season was last week against North Texas, who is 68th in the country in scoring defense. And the Mean Green held Navy to 17 total points. They have not seen anything close to Notre Dame's speed and physicality, which showed up in a big way last season. And I think that's right. Why Navy ended up having 6 total turnovers in that game. Notre Dame only forced 1. The rest were just botched pitches, just fumbles. They completely imploded on that side of the ball. But the player who had the toughest game is also their best player. Number 11, quarterback Blake Horvath. He is back, and everything revolves around him in this offense. He's a very dynamic runner. He has elite instincts for this offense, and he is a legitimate home run threat every time he carries the football. He already has 13 rushing touchdowns last year, and we saw how effective he can be if the defense busts. Notre Dame gave up a 60-yard run to Horvath last season early on in the game when it was still in doubt, and he also showed in that same game that he can be a liability when it comes to protecting the football. He led the nations in fumbles last year, and he is tied for the most again this year, plus he's thrown for 5 interceptions already this season. Despite the 5 interceptions, I would say he's much more of a passing threat than most Navy quarterbacks in the past, but he's not making a lot of big-time throws. Most of his passing yards come when the defense sells out on the run or there's a coverage bust. But the entire game plan for Notre Dame should be centered around stopping number 11. More on that later. Another player to know, number 46, fullback Alex Texa. He is a downhill fullback who gets a ton of yards after catch. They will also use him as a running back as well. He's not as much of a bowling ball as your traditional Navy fullback. He's 6 foot, 199 pounds. He's a little bit more athletic as well, so that's how they use him in outside runs and sweeps and things like that. But he's the guy who comes in, hammers the interior of that defense, and he forces Notre Dame to squeeze on the interior. And as we've seen in many Notre Dame games in the past, if they forget about the fullback, all of a sudden you see this guy rumbling and bumbling down the field and getting a big gain. So Notre Dame obviously has to key on him every play and make sure that they don't give up any yards up the middle. Number 22, I believe they call it the scat back, Eli Heidenreich. Outside of Horvath, he is the most dynamic weapon that they have. He is averaging 7 yards per carry on the ground on 49 carries. Plus, he leads the team with 575 receiving yards. He is very explosive and someone Notre Dame will have to account for on every single play. He has already accounted for 7 touchdowns on the year, 3 on the ground, 4 through the air. So he is a do-it-all player that I think could actually get some playing time in a lot of other Power 4 programs. So he's a great athlete, and they use him to try to create some chunk plays. Another player to keep an eye on, number 24, Brandon Chapman. He's similar to Heinrich in that he's a big play threat, but He's one of their fastest guys on offense. They try to use him on screens, jet sweeps, and things like that. He's just not quite as dynamic as number 22. Their strengths, they rarely get behind schedule. They average 6.6 yards per carry on first down. That is second nationally. So if you're getting 6 yards or 7 yards every single time on first down, you're going to move the ball pretty effectively. And that's why Navy has done that all year long. They lead the country in rush yards per game, pretty typical of a Navy offense, but it's not just because of the sheer volume. They are number 1 in EPA per rush attempt, and they are second in the country in tackles for loss allowed. So very rarely do teams push them back. They might win on the line of scrimmage, but the ball isn't going backwards. But Notre Dame can change that on Saturday. Navy can also hit you with explosives. They have 23 runs of over 20 yards or more, which is second in the country. And they also have 12 runs of 30 yards or more. So when they get out and Notre Dame misses a beat on defense, that is when Navy takes advantage. Their passing game has become a legit threat, not necessarily on like a down-to-down basis, but they can hit you with some shot plays. They're 130th in the country in pass yards per game, but they are second in yards per pass attempt. So when they throw, they're trying to hit you deep. Now, their weakness is ball security is job security in football, but Horvath is so good for this team most of the time that he can survive some turnovers. That will not be the case against Notre Dame, as we saw last year. They will take advantage when he coughs up the football. Their offensive line, I think, is significantly worse than it was last year. They have 3 new starters. They've had to reshuffle that group multiple times. So, again, they're still going to get yards on the run plays, but that's mostly because the defense is trying to account for so many different things in this spread/triple option offense. When defenses are able to take away the first down and force them into third and long, it just paralyzes the Navy offense. So, my keys for the Notre Dame defense, not surprisingly. Number 1, win on first down. I think first down is the money down in this game. Typically, third down is, but Notre Dame could basically stall out a Navy possession by winning on first down. When they do that and you force a second or third and long, this entire offense can fall apart. They don't get to do all the stuff that they normally do that keeps you guessing on every single play with all these different options. So put them behind the sticks on the early downs. My second key for the Notre Dame defense, go for the ball, especially when number 11, Blake Horvath, has it. Notre Dame's speed and their violence forced Navy into a meltdown last year. I'm sure Horvath is going to come out ready to make up for that, but if Notre Dame can get to him early, force a couple turnovers, I think he could spiral exactly like he did last year. The last thing, take advantage of the shot plays. Navy won't take a ton of them, but when they try this Notre Dame secondary, the Irish have to make them pay. They lead the country in interceptions this season with 16. They have been very opportunistic, and when Horvath has thrown the ball, he's already thrown 5 interceptions on just over 100 attempts on the year. So when that ball is in the air, go get it, Notre Dame secondary. And if you do that, if you steal possessions away from this Navy team, they're not really going to have a chance. Now, let's flip it over. Look at the Navy defense. Brian Newberry, their head coach, is a defensive guy, and he was actually their defensive coordinator before he was promoted to head coach. So I can't imagine he is very pleased with the group he has this season. Now, in fairness to Newberry, they lost a ton of production on that side of the ball, and they just haven't been able to replace it so far. They are bottom 100 nationally in yards per play allowed and points per drive, so it's basically like the complete opposite of their offense. They allow points on nearly half of their opponent possessions. Got that stat from Jamie Uyeyama of Irish Sports Daily. Always on it with the stats. And also, they've been bad on defense, and they've been playing mostly poor offenses. Like North Texas is good. They can put up points on anyone in the country. They put up 31 on Navy, but Navy has only played 2 top 40 units all season long, and they're still in the bottom in most statistical categories on defense. But they do have a couple guys you need to know about. Number 1, number 96. He's their nose guard. His name is Landon Robinson. He's the best player on the defense by far. He's not just good for Navy. He's legitimately a good dude. I mean, football player. He's first team all-conference in the American. He's not even 6 feet tall, but it doesn't matter. He uses his height, or I guess I should say the lack thereof, to his advantage in getting leverage against the offensive lineman, and he can push dudes back. He leads the team in tackles for loss, sacks, and pressures on the quarterback. He's also 4th on the team in tackles, which I think is very impressive for a defensive tackle. Number 56, that is linebacker Mark Anthony Parker. He's their leading tackler. He's 2nd on the team in tackles for loss, and he's pretty good against the run. So you're going to see him around the ball. But he is a huge liability in coverage. He has one of the worst PFF coverage grades for any linebacker in the entire country. So I think Notre Dame is going to try to find mismatches with him. If they can get 56 on Eli Raridan or one of the running backs, they are going to attack that matchup every single time. Number 35, edge rusher Luke Paris, I think that is his. I think that's how you spell his last name, or say his last name, I should say. Look, the dude plays hard. He's second on the team in tackles, but he's extremely inconsistent when it comes to tackling. He has one of the worst miss rates on the team, according to Pro Football Focus, and they have multiple first-year starting defensive backs that miss a ton of tackles, and teams have targeted them relentlessly. So there's really one guy you need to focus on in the Notre Dame offense. He's to focus on every single play. That is number 96. If they keep the ball away from him, they're probably going to move the ball at will. When we talk about the strengths of the defense, it's really just Robinson up the middle. Statistically, they have been pretty good against the run. They're 41st in the country, allowing under 4 yards per carry. But then North Texas absolutely shredded them on the ground. Their running back finished with 197 rushing yards. So when they went against an actually good rushing attack, they got torched. And clearly, the North Texas running back is not nearly as good as what Notre Dame has in its backfield. And Newberry is a smart defensive mind. He's going to throw some exotic looks to try to confuse Notre Dame. But if Notre Dame stays disciplined, I don't think that's going to be an issue. So now as we look to Navy's weaknesses, there's a bunch we can choose from. I've already talked about their secondary. It's terrible. They're in the bottom 20 nationally in yards per attempt, yards per completion. I could go on and on. They're also bottom 10 nationally in missed tackles, which is so uncharacteristic for a team as disciplined as Navy, but they can't really make plays in open space. And they are below average on third down, and yet they're even worse on fourth down. Opponents are converting 80% of fourth downs, so Navy cannot get off the field when they need to. Which leads me to my keys for the Notre Dame offense. Number one, stress the Navy secondary early. Notre Dame should take deep and intermediate shots early on like they did against Boston College when they tried to go to Malachi Fields on a double move on the first play. It didn't really work out for them, although they did get a pass interference penalty. It could have been a touchdown if CJ Carr had led Malachi Fields, but I'm guessing that Navy is going to try to do something similar and try to stack the box so you can actually pass the ball to set up the run in this case. I think that's what Notre Dame is going to do. It would be good for Notre Dame to score in bunches early on to force Navy out of their run-heavy style, because if Notre Dame forces, or if Notre Dame scores early and then they force Navy to chase, that defense could crumble even faster, and you also take them completely out of what their offense wants to be. Another thing, force them to tackle in space because they just can't do it, right? Quick routes to Jordan Faison and Will Pauling should be there all day, especially if the DBs are sagging off to prevent the deep ball. Just give them the ball in open space, especially Jordan Faison, the way that he's been breaking tackles this year. He could turn a slant into a big play every single time. And if you can get the ball to Jeremiah Love on the outside, I don't think these Navy tacklers are going to have a ton of success bringing number 4 down. And the last key for the Notre Dame offense, keep the foot on the gas. Put aside the mutual respect component of this game and light up the scoreboard. Style points matter. I talked about it earlier. Notre Dame should go for as many points as possible. Last year, they put up 51. They got some help from their defense because Jalen Snead scored a touchdown. They might get another defensive touchdown this Saturday, but the offense needs to get back on track. They need to get over 40 points on Saturday, and I think they will. Okay, offense, check. Defense, check. Now let's get into special teams where Navy could get a little weird, and then I'll tell you exactly how I think this one plays out on Saturday, next on Locked On Irish. Today's episode is brought to you by FanDuel. The NBA is back, and there's no better place to get in on the action than FanDuel, the official sports betting partner of the NBA. Even if you missed the start of the game and want to ride the hot hand, FanDuel has live bets on everything from who will score next to fourth quarter comebacks. Plus, you can even combine your live bets into a same-game parlay for a shot at a bigger payout. It keeps every game exciting, especially when your team's making that late push. Here's my pick. I've been giving it out all week on the show. Victor Wembanyama to win MVP, plus 380 right now on FanDuel. And FanDuel is giving new customers $300 in bonus bets when your first $5 bet wins. So head to FanDuel.com to sign up and play your game with FanDuel, the official sports betting partner of the NBA. Special teams has been a hot topic as of late when talking about Notre Dame football. But before we get to the unmitigated disaster that is the Notre Dame kicking game, let's talk about what Navy does on special teams. I would say they're below average across the board. Now, their kicker is 36 of 36 on extra point attempts on the year. Must be nice. And he's 6 of 7 on field goals with a long of 48. But that 48-yarder is a bit of an outlier. He is 5 of 11 for his career beyond 40 yards, so he doesn't have a super strong leg, and he's not really effective on kickoffs either. Navy is 80th in kickoff return defense, and they have actually given up more returns than they've had touchbacks. So Jadarian Price should have some opportunities in this one. Hopefully he can bounce back after last week. It's to the point when Jadarian Price gets a kick return, I'm just expecting him to take one to the house, or maybe not even take one to the house, but at least get a big gain. And last week against Boston College, it just felt like he was finding the nearest Boston College defender and running right into him, which is pretty uncharacteristic of Price. So maybe he'll get back on track this week because I do think he's going to have a couple chances against Navy. They're also 55th in net punting, so mediocre in the kicking game overall. Running back Isaiah Bryant is the kick returner, and Brandon Chapman is their primary punt returner. Neither one of these guys has been really effective this season, so I don't think Notre Dame is going to be too concerned about kicking to either one of them. And Navy doesn't really do anything super exciting on special teams most of the time, but they ran a fake punt to their big D tackle, Landon Robinson, last year in their rivalry game against, against Army. So Notre Dame should be on the lookout for that because they have proven they're not afraid to pull out all the stops in their biggest games on the schedule, and Notre Dame is certainly right up there with Navy. They also tried to pull like a sneaky onside kick against North Texas once they got down. So Notre Dame is going to have to be ready. I will say that the front line of Notre Dame on kick return, it's the number one rule. They have to see the kicker kick the ball before they turn around. Some teams get a little bit loose with that. They start running down the field, and that is where opposing teams try to take advantage, and they squib a little onsider and catch them when they're not looking. Notre Dame is really disciplined on kickoff return. I don't think they're going to do that, but they should watch out for it, maybe even bringing a couple guys up, because I could totally see Navy doing something like an onside kick or running a fake punt to try to steal a possession away from Notre Dame, especially on punt block, because Notre Dame can get really aggressive. Maybe they try to hit Notre Dame over the top. But my key for the Notre Dame special teams is really simple. Pick Noah Burnett and stick with him. I had concerns about Noah Burnett going into the season. I talked about it a lot during the offseason, but then he started out 5 of 5 on field goal attempts on the year, and he actually came through in some key spots against Miami and Texas A&M when Notre Dame absolutely needed him to make the field goal in order to stay in the game. He also didn't miss an extra point for the first couple games. It's not his fault that Tyler Buckner dropped the snap in the Texas A&M game, but then he got hurt sometime after the Arkansas game, and ever since they brought him back, he's just not been the same. I don't know how much of it is physical compared to mental at this point, but it's clear he is not the same player. He missed an extra point in a chip shot field goal against USC, and last week he missed yet another extra point. But the guys that Notre Dame has tried to replace him with have been even worse. Eric Schmidt has missed an extra point. He's 0 of 2 on field goal attempts, and neither field goal attempt was even remotely close to going in. Like if you had taken a field goal post and you had put it directly to his right in that game against Boston College when he shanked that one, it still would not have gone in. That's how badly he missed it. And then Marcello Diomede is a good story, but he's not the guy either. So at this point, I think Notre Dame just has to stick with Noah Burnett as their kicker. That's why they went out and got him in the transfer portal, and they took him away from North Carolina. I understand that he struggled, but they can't keep rotating guys. That's not working. That's not going to fix the problem. And I think it's clearly a mental thing for Burnett at this point. So they got to show some belief in him, and hopefully Burnett will reciprocate that belief and start looking like himself again, because this is a guy who has attempted 68 field goals in his career, all at the Power 4 level. He's knocked in 79% of them, so he has to be the guy moving forward. They have to pick him, and they have to just ride him out here, and hopefully it works out. If Noah Burnett can't figure it out, then yeah, they're going to have to start going for 2 every single time, which would be a ridiculous situation for Notre Dame to be in, but maybe that will be the reality, although I am hopeful that Noah Burnett is going to start to turn things around. Another key for Notre Dame on special teams, just stay disciplined. Like I said, Navy's going to try and steal some possessions. Notre Dame cannot afford to give them any. I already talked about the front line of the kick return, punt return. They all have to be cognizant of fakes more so than blocking the punt, and they have not had a clean game on special teams since NC State. When they made all their extra points, they knocked in all their field goal attempts, and they didn't commit some other sort of disaster. So it is long overdue for Marty Biagi's unit. And that leads me to my predictions. I'm sure Navy was embarrassed by how last year went against Notre Dame. It was hyped as one of the biggest Notre Dame-Navy matchups in decades. Both teams are ranked. It was at MetLife. There's a big Navy crowd. My guy Joel Klatt at Fox Sports actually picked Navy to win outright. I was there in the studio when he did it, and I could not believe he said it. And then Navy completely imploded. It got to a point where even as a Notre Dame fan, it didn't even feel fun anymore. It was like awkward to watch. The defensive guys definitely enjoyed it because they got to make plays nonstop in that game. But the size and the athleticism gap was so obvious, you almost felt bad for Navy, especially when they just kept coughing up the football. So going into this game, I think Navy has a lot of pride on the line. I expect them to play hard early and not melt down immediately. This is a disciplined program. This is a proud football program. and they had one of its worst days ever against Notre Dame in 2024. I think they're going to hang around a little bit in the first half, but eventually Notre Dame's talent is going to take over. Navy just doesn't have the horses defensively to slow down Notre Dame, especially on the outside. And CJ Carr looked a lot better last week against Boston College, and I think he's going to be even better this week. Indy is going to hit some early explosive plays that force Navy to space out defensively, and once that happens, the run game is going to take control. So I'm going to go with 4 passing touchdowns and over 300 yards for CJ Carr, so long as the weather cooperates. And can we please finally get Eli Raridan in the end zone? I feel like a broken record saying it every week, but Navy has been bad at defending tight ends. This feels like a match made in heaven for number 9 in the blue and gold. I'm also expecting a bounce-back game for Jadarian Price as well. He got benched last week after his 3rd fumble of the season. All 3 fumbles happened in the red zone, and I think he's going to break 2 long runs in this game. And then defensively, yeah, sure, Notre Dame might give up a couple long drives early on, but I trust that they're going to force multiple turnovers again and flip the game that way. This is going to be a big game for linebackers like Jalen Sneed and Drake Bowen, even Kingston Viliama-Asa, who struggled last year against Navy and got hurt against Army. I think he's going to step up. And even though he doesn't have the experience against the option like the other guys, I think he's going to have a huge game because he's so big, fast, athletic, and all of these guys should have a huge game in this one. So give me Notre Dame 41-17. The Irish need to dominate this one, not for perception, but for themselves, and I think they'll get it done under the lights. All right, that's going to do it for me today. Thanks again for making this your first watch or listen of the day. If you've not already, make sure that you are subscribed on YouTube or wherever you get your podcasts. And please like the video, rate and review the show. It helps a ton. And get your mailbag questions in for tomorrow's Friday mailbag episode. Drop them right here in the YouTube comments or hit me up on social media. The X account is @LockedOnIrish and Instagram is @LockedOnIrishPod. I'm going to be right back here tomorrow morning. I'll see you then.